Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says state capture and a lack of political will have hampered the pace of transformation of South Africa's economy. Speaking at a Black Management Forum event, he said the progress of Black Africans into top management position averaged about 15% in the 3 years between 2018 and 2020. The minister added that this happened while whites continued to dominate the top management roles, accounting for nearly 65%. Head of Advocacy and Thought Leadership at the Black Management Forum, Monde Ndlovu, joins me now to talk more on this. Monde, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. Do you believe that government is committed to using all levers at their disposal at this particular point, including legislation, to advance the economic transformation agenda?
Good evening, my brother. Good evening to your listeners. So firstly, we believe that government is definitely not doing all it can to ensure that transformation is driven the way it ought to at top management level and right across the economy. Secondly, it's not only the responsibility of government from a policy and legislative perspective, but also the responsibility of top leadership in corporates and businesses at large. So there is an issue on both ends from a business perspective in terms of that leadership and what they think about transformation, and also an issue on the government side on how far and how committed and the political will that it needs to take to drive the transformation agenda even more. So there's these both parties on either side that are holding their hands on the levers of power regarding progress on transformation, and both of them have not done fairly well. In fact, it has been abysmal, to say the least, even though there's been a little bit of movement historically when you look at the numbers. But where we're sitting today, both parties are not showing signs of clear-cut commitment to transformation in the country.
Then you have government saying, but we are looking to you as black professionals to partner with us in this particular campaign of ensuring that we transform the economy. I mean, what role do black professionals play or can play or have been allowed to play?
So I think they should not do intellectual scapegoating on the issue. Because it is not the role of black professionals to come up with policies in the first place. Secondly to that, black professionals and professionals in general do have a role to play because they are citizens of this country, ought to be patriotic in how they view the country and its sustainability and future. So the role of professionals on the one hand is to ensure that they understand the role they ought to play within organizations, and secondly, embrace transformation and its tenets as they move up the leadership ladder, so to speak. What we have seen, though, unfortunately, is that you may have a black executive at the top who does not have a lot of power to make decisions regarding transformation, and there are white counterparts, white compatriots, whom report to them, who seemingly have more power from a line management perspective, etc., within an organization. So we've seen this growing trend, unfortunately, where black executives seemingly are used as tokens still today, and it is an age-old problem. It's a problem from the 80s and early 90s, where you're having black faces being put up there and them not necessarily fully embracing what they need to do. Of course, they are being put under pressure because they must perform on one hand, and on the other hand, they've got to drive the agenda. And so they cannot do it on their own. And that is why black professionals must be part of black lobby groups, organizations like the BMF, organizations like UPSIB, organizations like ABASA, because these organizations are able to articulate the perspectives, they are able to articulate and challenge the status quo, both on the government side, public sector side, and private sector side, and express the views of these professionals who may not, in their personal capacity, be able to challenge their corporates. And that is the broader role of the black lobby groups. They have a far more important role to play because they're able to push policy perspectives, they're able to challenge policy positions, they're able to challenge power in the private sector side and hold power to account on both ends of the spectrum. So there is an individual role that must take place of black professionals within organizations in challenging and still staying in those organizations. Secondly, the role of black lobby groups that must continue to organize, continue to agitate, continue to make the noise, continue to raise the sharp, challenging, difficult issues on both ends of the spectrum. Imagine, my brother, BMF disappearing into oblivion. Imagine the Black Business Council disappearing into oblivion. Imagine APSIB and ABASA disappearing and not coming forth and challenging. We would be in a far worse position as far as transformation is concerned. So we must ensure that we support the black lobby groups in their quest for economic transformation broadly in the economy. Without these voices, without them, it will be even more difficult to drive this agenda.
Yeah. Over and above what you've just articulated around the role of the black lobby groups and the responsibility that they are taking in driving this agenda, the minister also says that black professionals would need to consider, I'm not sure what he means by that, but maybe you can reflect on it, why black managers tended to be associated with failure and incompetence. Do you think it's a fair analysis?
Well, look, that analysis, unfortunately, is not fair. We don't agree with that analysis. We've got sharp black managers out there in corporate. Could name a few. Mr. Mteto Nyati is one of them. Mr. Sipho Nkosi, the stalwarts, the legends, with Dr. Roel Khoza of this world, Eric Mafunas of this world, the late Don Mkhwanazis of this world, the late Monde Ndlovus of this world, Nolita Fagudes of this world. There's a plethora of capable black talent that has paved the way. Now, the issue with that statement is that it's not coming from our ranks specifically, but it is an age-old issue under colonialism, under apartheid, that black people are incapable. Black people cannot run productive assets. Black people cannot do, etc., etc. Now, we need to differentiate between these issues because there is a human issue regarding competency and corruption, because people think that incompetence goes hand in hand with black people and corruption goes hand in hand with black people, when in fact incompetence and corruption goes hand in hand with human frailties broadly. So it cuts across the races. It's not a black issue. So we must really be careful when we say some of these things. We don't accept it. We never have accepted it. And those black people who have fallen into the trap of being incompetent and corrupt, they don't speak on our behalf. They don't represent us as black people, because I've just mentioned a few very powerful, capable, and there's a plethora, there's an army of black managers and leaders that have done great things in this country in leadership spaces right across. Why don't we talk about them? Why don't you uplift their successes? Why don't we articulate their role that they have played in driving corporates to be profitable, driving a clear value system within those organizations? Why don't we do that?
To be fair, and you're correct, what you're pointing out in the number of successes, they are largely in the private sector, barring a few who are also part of the public sector. The statement by the minister is referring largely to the failed, for example, state of local government, saying we need to ask some difficult questions and not shy away from asking the question as to why do you find that largely black managers in municipalities are failing?
All right. So if you want to zoom into that perspective, I think we already know that part of that challenge, one is incapacity. Secondly, the challenge there is the people who are being deployed, right, political deployees in those spaces. So we really need to zoom into that issue. There's an issue of capacity and who is capacitating, and hence the whole drive of professionalizing the public service. And the BMF has been a protagonist in driving that kind of narrative that we need to professionalize the public service. So, of course, again, going back to the point I mentioned, those black managers who are incompetent in either sector, they don't represent the sum total of the successes of black leadership out there. And where they exist, we've got to double check. We've got to remove those who are incompetent and replace them with those who are competent. Secondly, We must capacitate leadership on the ground. That is the responsibility that government has. But to squarely zoom it in and say, well, there's black incompetence and try to zoom it in on and pin it on black people as a whole, we really got to dig further and say some of these people should not have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
Some of them were not capacitated in the first place. So whose responsibility was that? And that is why the BMF had been calling for a professionals panel for many years. That concept has been around the BMF for at least 10, 15 years, that we can assist in creating a professionals panel that can assist the deployment of leadership and managers across the public sector and even into the private sector, because the issue lies there. Who is selecting, who is deploying, for what reasons, for what purpose, so that for whatever the purposes right at the end. So the issue must be clear. If there's incapacity, we need to capacitate. If someone is incompetent, they need to be removed and replaced with a competent manager. And we know that on the ground, those challenges in municipal level are there, of competency, of character as well, and values on the ground as well. We need to do that work and unpack those issues.
So, I mean, I take it that you would gladly welcome the narrative or even the idea of meritocracy in our approach to transformation, which is what the finance minister is now talking about.
Meritocracy has always been part of the narrative of the BMF. Definitely, we've got to be very clear that we must capacitate leaders, even those that have potential who don't have the skills. You need to develop them even further so that they can be adequately equipped to respond to the issues of the workplace, on the ground, and especially the public sector, because you are serving the people of South Africa. So you really want to put your best people there, but you've also got to go into a process of developing that cadre of leadership, that credible, competent leaders on the ground who are very clear on their mandate, that they are there to serve, they are there to lead, they are there to make decisions in the best interest of the people, so that on the ground, the masses, our people, can feel the presence of that kind of leadership. So merit has always been there, and you've got to protect it. You've got to develop it, develop your own timber, and protect it, sustain it, give it space to thrive.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Monde, for coming on this evening. That's Monde Ndlovu, Head of Advocacy and Thought Leadership at the Black Management Forum.